Welcome to Return on Insights, the show where candid conversations with bold founders and leaders spark actionable insights for your business. I'm David Lindover.
And I'm Erin Abatangelo. Each week, we pull back the curtain with leaders who are scaling teams and shaping the future, sharing the insights that create impact far beyond the bottom line.
Discover how high-performing companies build enduring cultures, inspire teams to think bigger, and turn vision into action. If you see storytelling as your strategic advantage, you're in the right place.
Today on Return on Insights, we're joined by Susy Martins, an executive coach and people operations leader with deep global experience spanning North America, Europe, South America, and Asia. From leading billion-dollar teams at companies like GE, 3M, and Applyboard, driving transformative HR and organizational strategies, Susy has a front-row seat on what makes high-performing, human-centered organizations thrive. She's here to share candid insights on the future of work, the challenges facing Gen Z, and why human interaction skills are more critical than ever in a world of AI and automation. Hi, welcome, Susy. Thanks you for being here.
Thank you.
So, Susy, I'm really excited about this topic and having you on the show. So I've been following and engaging in conversations around AI and automation, how they're shaping and reshaping work, HR practices. So I'm really excited about this, and I'm really looking forward to hearing your perspective on all of this. You've led teams all over the world, and you've seen firsthand how the changes impact people and culture. So let's start with the global perspective. How can organizations stay human-centered but thrive with all this change? Because let's be honest, there's more change flying at us every day. How do they survive this? How do they thrive?
Yeah. I think, there's so much talk on the technology, but it really comes down to core, I think, communication, right? So I was just talking today in a conversation with someone I'm working with, and they have a lot of things going on. And I think the most important thing you could have is clarity. I was like, you need to go back to your goals and just show people, you know what, there's a lot of stuff going on right now, but everybody needs to be crystal clear and guided by, what are you doing? What's your company trying to solve? What are those goals, and what does it mean to you in your role? This is 101 business, but it gets so lost, right? When people are in this kind of era of AI FOMO, your fear of missing out, you want to get in there and do all these things. And is it even the right solution, right? And what does it mean for you? Well, step it back, right? And just stay focused on are you trying to solve if you're in healthcare, a problem for patients and patient care in a certain area? Okay. So how does it line up what you're doing and some of these other actions? So I think that's the first place to start. And I think there's also an opportunity, just thinking about it, to go and really invest at the manager level. I still think we went through kind of the COVID era where, we really flipped the switch on being hybrid and remote, and everybody's like, I want to do that, right? And there's a lot of studies that say people absolutely want to work remotely, but it also says they're not as happy being remote. So it's it's kind of this weird thing, right? If you actually look at the stats. And I think it's because we're social beings, right? And we want to interact and learn, and it can be isolating. You're not as connected to your teams, right? When you are remote. So I think there's a big opportunity there, to kind of think about, how do you collaborate differently, right? And engaging with our leaders to give them those skill sets. They kind of went remote. There's a lot of turnover. So there's not a lot of leaders that have experience of successfully managing remote teams to business outcomes. So
I was going to say, how much training went into at the beginning of COVID, how to re-educate, how to re-engage people when you're working constantly online with one another. I'm going to say probably pretty close to zero. Bad assumption, good assumption, I'm not sure. But, people have had to learn on the go, which is great. But, to be a people leader in this world isn't easy.
Yeah,
that's for sure.
It's probably the hardest era right now to be a people leader, because I grew up in the era of and I'm a product of so much development and leadership programs and rotating through all of those. And I feel I wish that for everyone, that companies go back and invest in that. Right. And I think there may be an era where we do that next, because I think we need it. There's a lot of just, polish needed.
And you know what, you said something, it's kind of the first part of your comment there around communication and getting back to the basics, getting back to what your mission and vision are. And I think a lot of companies and a lot of leaders that I've spoken to, at least, have commented that they see a lot of people trying to force fit that, square peg in a round hole. They're trying to use AI. They're trying to find ways to implement technology for the sake of, we need to be at that forefront. We need to be at the table and having those conversations. But what they're not doing is they're not looking at it from what do we solve? Who's our client? Like, how do we use it best? And if we're not using it best, put it aside, right?
Yeah.
We don't have to use it for everything. Like, use it where it's best needed. And I don't think a lot of people are necessarily doing that. I mean, you have a better perspective. So what are you seeing out there? Like, are people using it strategically, or are they forcing it?
Well, it's funny because I was looking up stats on this the other day, and I think it's something like, 80% of people want to say it's a top priority for their business, but less than 15% even understand what they could do, right? So they're saying, like, I need to get AI in here, but I have no idea what that means or what AI is or whatever, right? So I think that if you really want to have meaningful change and you want to think about AI, you have to look at your whole process, right? Like, what are you doing at work? What are the services that you offer, and looking at them end to end? If you just pile things on, it's the same as it's always been. That never makes it smooth. Like we went through robotics before this, when robots were a big thing, and people would stick a robot all over a process. Like, does that make sense? Now you have 500 robots on there that no one understands, right? That would, okay, that is faster, but when it breaks and 3 people turned over, no one knows how to fix it, right? So
Right.
I think this is the same thing now in the AI era. It's just like, okay, guys, like, let's step back. And I think eventually we'll get to a NASCAR version of this where, you're starting a company and then you pull in and somebody already knows what you need to do to put the wheels on that, to HR or something, and like finance, procurement, whatever, all the different areas. It's going to be known, like, what's the happy path in terms of process embedded like with AI, right? But right now, to untangle this and look at what you're already doing, I think younger companies have the advantage, or brand new ones that are getting built, because they can build with, just figuring out how to build something and with the best technology now. Whereas it's a heavy lift for big orgs, and some are doing a really good job. Like, I'd say, if you want to see who's doing a good job, I would say follow RBC, follow Manulife. They award-winning, both of them globally in the financial services sector. That's pretty cool. Magna's another one I've seen quoted quite a bit in terms of what they're doing and on the operational side. And then there's other examples like Hopper, which is, on the tech side, that you could kind of see how are they embedding it and how have they changed things around to make them really AI native almost in their processes.
Takes a lot of budget, a lot of courage, and a lot of innovation. And innovation needs to be at the core of the value of the organization. So it's really great to hear you say RBC is part of that. It's a big organization. Things can work really slow when you've got 80,000 plus employees. So, knowing that they're trying to adapt in a way that's responsible and innovative, that sounds great.
Yeah, where there's a lot of guardrails too, right? Like financial services, you have to really think about the ethical AI, right? If you're in those services. So I think we have some big players that are making some meaningful partnerships out there with the Microsofts of the world and other companies like that, share similar values, can build with you and do pilots, right? So I think piloting is a good first start. Just don't try and do the whole thing, right? Take one thing, see if it works, and then do your next thing, right? Like the different services or products.
I love the idea of the NASCAR. You come in, it bolts everything together for you. Do you think we're far off with companies, having companies set up to be able to be the framework that they can come in to help other organizations? Like where are we in that space? Do you know?
I would say that some companies are there. I think we had our first company where there's one person built $1 billion company. They were saying we're waiting for that. I think we're already there, right? So they've been able to do it. So I think there's examples of this for sure, right? And I think that I'm actually surprised at how fast some of these companies have come out and just eat other people's lunch, right?
Oh.
So, you think that, it's coming and, there's hype, and there is a lot of hype and there is a bubble, all that stuff, but there is really big progression as well, right? So if you have smart people with money behind them building something that, can kind of make something else that's happening much faster, and if it's high quality, I think this is a very exciting era for that, right? And we're going to see a lot of change. It's already happening. Yeah.
Technological disruption happens more and more frequently. This one seems like a biggie, because I think that it's not just at the enterprise or the corporate level. It's touching the people at the lowest levels, the entry level as well. I've had some discussions with people about how do you use AI to ensure that you don't sound like everyone else when you're submitting a resume, or that you stand out. Went from just use the keywords because there's bots reading keywords to AI now that can rewrite your resume in seconds to match the job description perfectly. Mm-hmm. So going back to an example, I I was speaking to someone about this, and I did a test back probably February, March. I rewrote my resume that was like 10 years old based on a job that I was perfect for. And I used AI, and I had my cover letter, and I had the resume, and I submitted it, and I didn't hear back. And it was like, it was the perfect resume for that application. And I thought, for sure I'll get, an interview. Nothing. And then I tried it a few more times, and the same thing happened. And then I spoke to someone, and they're like, well, AI is making it too perfect. So where's the happy medium? Like, how do we use this in the recruiting world and as people applying?
Yeah, no, this is a great question. I think that a lot of people have. So I guess, like I'll talk to someone, like let's say I'm in an Uber, I'm always talking if you know me. Right? So then I'm just like, how's it going? Whatever. And like, usually they're like, oh, I'm looking for a job. I can't find one. Like, it's so hard. The companies are so hard. The country's so hard, whatever. Right. And I'm like, well, what did you do? Well, they're like, oh yeah, like I applied to all these companies. I applied to hundreds of companies a day or something. And I'm like, well, you're never going to get a job, like ever in your life like this, because like the same thing is happening everywhere. So people know about AI bots that you can use for recruiting.
Yeah.
So like right now, it's estimated that 1 in 3 people actually use these bots in their application process. So, jobs that used to have 2 applicants now have 2,000 applicants. And guess what? You don't even know you applied to those jobs. So like 99% of the people probably that apply to jobs now don't even know they applied. But they're all going through the same advice that you took, right? You're like, well, I'm smart. I'm going to go and use these tools. You did it. It looks better, whatever. But now you have a lot of same. So everybody's putting, it's almost like a factory. You put in your resume in, and then it goes,
yeah.
And everybody's almost exactly the same, right? With all the exact same advice, with blowing it out to the whole market in places that doesn't even make sense for you necessarily to, apply or whatnot. So then on the other side is the recruiter. So now the recruiter, you imagine you applied you put out like a junior admin role for marketing or something, and you used to get maybe 1 applicant or maybe 4, depending, maybe you're a really small company or something, right? Maybe 20. Now you have 2,000. So then you're like, oh my God, like, what do I do? Like, how do I actually handle this? So I think that now it's actually going back a lot to referrals, right? Like we're going back in time a little bit here because it's so hard to know, like, who's real. Like Gartner is estimating by 2030 that 1 in 4 applicants will be fake. So, it's like all the automation is making things the same, right? Like when you input them, then you have a lot of cheating going on. There's a lot of recruitment fraud, right? Where you have misrepresentation, where people are interviewing for other people. There's technologies that can, it looks like I'm showing up, but it's actually you interviewing, right? And there's other ones that can tell you real time what your answers should be, right? Or how to frame them. So it's like, it's getting really hard out there in terms of like knowing who's a good candidate. So I think referrals is a big thing. Proof of work will be a big thing. I've seen companies like one of the best examples I saw recently, like from a company side, is GitHub. And I think GitHub, and I can't remember who the other one was, that they're doing kind of a try before you buy. And I think this is the thing that I'm going to really back is there a way to just have someone do a project with you before they start? You pay them. Do a little 1-week project, 2-week project to just kind of try before you buy with people on both sides. Do you want to work there? And do they want to work with you, right? Because I think there's a lot of kind of, you're getting to bad situations in recruitment. A lot of time now in the tech recruiting, like everybody will get like AI to help them with their assignments. So then they come for interviews and they're like, this person is maybe even better than what their assignments are because they didn't even think through their assignment, used AI, or there's someone who should not be at all interviewing, that they're not appropriate whatsoever, right? So it's just a mess. So it's like all of these things need to be rethought through. Like, how do you actually validate? A lot more companies are moving back to in-person interviewing, especially for senior roles, 100%. And then I think there's a referral culture and then proof of work. I think this will continue to increase.
Yeah,
it's a lot of change.
Years and years and years ago, when I was agency side, that was the big thing. You would go in and, you went through multiple interviews, and then most agencies had you do something on site, right? They would give you a case study, and it was a fake case study, and you wrote your answers, right? And it kind of gave you gave them an example of the way you think, not just under pressure, but, how do they think? What are they thinking? Now, this was way before AI, and it was always very stressful, but it wasn't do work for free, which a lot of agencies and a lot of companies will ask you to do. And I love that you said, pay for that work, because a lot of people's job is their mind, and you need to pay for those thoughts and those strategies. But this was like a hour process, right? And it was, like I said, stressful, but it gave them a sense of who you were, how you thought, how you could perform. And, I see there's nothing wrong with that kind of stuff, especially like, I can't believe some of the things you just said about, people interviewing for other people. And like, to me, one of the things that I believe as a communication strategist is, you never want to be part of the sea of sameness, right? How do you stand out? And that goes for resumes as well. You're not going to stand out if you run them through AI. I learned that through my little test. And I thought to myself afterwards, I kind of regret not submitting my actual resume, but that would have meant having to update it, right? To have a proper test. And I was kind of feeling a little lazy, to be honest. But, it's interesting that, people are trying to fake their way through. And I don't really understand that, I guess, is what I'm saying is, if you want the job, be yourself, right? Go in authentically and work for it.
I agree. Sometimes I say, like, who are these people's parents? what is going on? Like, there's just so much fraud in all of this. Like, it's shocking. Like, if they use their energy to do something positive versus like, choking out the system. Like, there's another company, I think it's like Fluly now. And basically it was a kid from, I think, Stanford that was cheating on something, and he figured out a way to do it. And then he basically got expelled for doing that. And then he got funded, I think, upwards of $5 million, to basically help people like cheat real time on interviews and things like that. And then they changed it so that it was incorporated into this other company that just helps give you real time information, which is kind of interesting. Like, if we were talking and I mentioned like a company you might not know, then it would highlight its name like in front of you, and you could click on it and kind of see who they are. So you're always up to date as we're talking, which is kind of cool. But the cheating component's not cool. And I'm like, who the heck are these like, PE firms that are like, or whoever investors are, let's just say, funding something like this? For me, I'm like, it gives me the ick, right? Like, I'm like, that's wrong. Like, and this guy, he's probably super smart. And he could do so many other better things, like maybe stop cybercrime or something, or
instead of encouraging it.
Correct. Yeah. So it's just like, I don't know, it's disheartening that some of the stuff that's going on, and then it makes it easy access, and then everybody wants to have that edge, right? So they start buying into these types of tools. So I think the other thing in recruitment that's happening is like, what is the right way to use AI? Because like, let's face it, everybody's going to use AI and different tools that they can get their hands on to interview. So if you look at Anthropic, for example, they have an AI in recruitment policy. So they've actually posted it in the internet, and you can look them up, and it'll say, this is, basically how to use AI and how not to use it in our recruitment process. And it'll actually also give you prompts. So it will tell you, here, you can prompt these types of questions to find out information about like our organization or different things about the process or things you should know before you come. But don't use AI for our tests, or don't use it for this or that. That's where we draw the line, right? But all these other things, we assume that you should, or you could, use AI. And then, and all the best companies, they're using AI in HR, but they're really not using it for the engine for selection, right? Because that still has so much, bias and like so much evolution that you need to do to get that right. So, and you've probably seen this, or you may not have, but like Workday's having like, they've been in the news because they've been investigating that, right? Like, how are they weeding people out, and like, what are the parameters of that AI, and is it right or is it wrong, or like, does it need to change, etc. So I think the whole HR community from a selection perspective is watching that, but more focused on, I think, like automation, like making it easy to make job descriptions, right? Or post a job. Yes, AI, like easy operational stuff. But when it comes down to those critical decisions, it's, take a pause and build a really strong model and parameters to get that out there.
So what about companies that are using bots to scan resumes before they even make it to HR? Right? Like, what's the detriment to people when that is the case? And I get it. If you're getting 2,000 resumes for a job, I don't want to, I remember, recruiting for, jobs, and the thought of having to scan even 150 resumes was daunting. I've got enough on my plate, right? I'm already working 12-hour days. I don't want to be scanning 120, 150 resumes. So, we're using bots to help us. What's your advice? Because those bots are going to exist. They're there. They've been there for years.
Yeah.
What's the advice to, especially, people coming into the industry that use technology for everything, that, we're taught AI in school.
Yep.
Gen Z, they're being taught how to use it. They're very savvy, but how do you get past the bots? How do you not become part of the sea of sameness? Or, how do you get to the physical personal review?
So like from a candidate perspective,
Yeah.
my advice is like get connected in different ways. You need to go at it from a different angle, right? Like if you do what everybody else is doing, it's the same as it's always been. You're going to get like in that big sea of sameness, like you said. And I think there's just an opportunity, like if I go back to my like Uber driver example. So like I was talking like just recently to someone, and then I just said, well, have you tried like going to your community Facebook? I was like, listen, there's a lot of like weird things on my community Facebook, and I'm not on there often. However, if you are like this person was in the trades, I was like, if you're in the trades and said like, hey, I'm new to the area, I'm looking to get into plumbing or whatever, right? That people will engage with you. You could try to meet with them, or like, you could go to a company and say you're interested in doing this or want to do a project, right? So I think it's like actually getting face to face. And I honestly think it's hard for people now, and it's getting harder and harder. Like, and this is for sure something that like younger generations who are digital native, like they're so used to being on the screen and texting, etc. So I think they don't have the practice doing that. And even anyone of any generation, that they're going to have a hard time with it now because they're not used to it now. Like people are just have opted, especially since COVID, to be more remote, be more distance, and like it seems like such a big effort to go do some of these things, but I think that's the way you're going to differentiate yourself. Like there's another company that I've been talking to that like is more sophisticated, and I was like, how do you hire people, right? And they're like, oh yeah, we get like thousands of applications, and they're like, actually, my first stop is the kids that come to our events, right? Because they do innovation events, and they're like, some kids coming from schools, they're interested to learn, see what's going on, what are companies doing in our ecosystem. They're asking questions, and they talk to them about, what's going on in the company. Boom, you've differentiated yourself. You just showed up. So the bar is getting to the point where it's like, you show up, people are going to know who you are. And like, who doesn't like a happy, smart young person? That's like my favorite thing ever. So like,
yes.
And lots of people are, but like, if you're that happy, smart one that shows up, like showing up is the big part. So I think that's my advice. You want to get out of the pile, then you have to figure out like to make an effort to see people in person, right? So you have to figure out maybe just data mining within LinkedIn even, and looking for maybe not the recruiter, but other people who work there, or through your alumni. You could look at like, where did you go to school? Is anybody from your school connected to the place that you want to work or want to learn more about? And could they make an intro? So like trying to find that different happy path through different ways.
Right. I like that. You've mentioned happy path a couple of times.
Oh. I didn't realize.
No, it's a really great idea. It's a really great concept. And is it just something that is just, do you have a representation of what a happy path is, or is that just?
Oh, I picked up this saying a long time ago, like when I was in ops. It's kind of like the path of least resistance is the happy path, right? So it's like, what's the happy path to doing this? Like bang, bang, bang. Instead of like, sometimes you'll be looking at something and it's like you're bouncing around. You're like, okay, like this is not good. Like no one's happy here. So the happy path is just like you could walk the straight line. So that's what I'm talking about. Like, because it's like, it's a horrible strategy to just apply endlessly online. Like you might get lucky. It's like winning a lottery ticket, actually, like probably with all the technology and everybody else doing the same thing as you. You know what I mean? And guess what? Like something like 80% of people admit to lying on their resumes now. So again, who are their parents? But like, I do think like this makes it so hard. It makes it so hard. And I think even if you're not lying, like you see something like someone putting project management on their resume. Like, what does that even mean? Right? Like for me, project management, like I've managed global projects and system projects and like complex projects to my measurement and my experience, right? So that means something to me. So, but someone else may have just managed, I don't know, like one piece or not, like, I don't know, or did a task, right? And they all call it project management. So I think that's also hard, right? So that might be perceived as lying, but it's not. It's just actually their perception of what does that even mean, or being analytical. It's like those classic questions, like it might not be as important anymore. Like score yourself 1 to 10 on Excel. Okay. Like what would you
I'm
say?
honest. I get a 1 on that.
And like you could say that you're, like really proficient, but then you don't know maybe something.
What does that mean?
Somebody else thinks
it's so subjective. You're right. But I mean, back in the day, I'm really dating myself, but if you lied on your resume, right? Like they're going to find out, like you walked away and the panic, right? You had to, account for that. People were checking up on, what did Aaron do for you, right? Like, they called your references and, I'm just blown away by some of the stuff you're saying. I got to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
The fakes, the this, the that. Oh my God.
I think the globalness of it all too, right? Like, because you probably grew up in a smaller community. So did I. And like, everybody would know you, right? And even it's a small community, if you say like, even in Canada, like most people will know you. So there is reference checks, I think, still, but it gets harder when there's just so many more people and they're coming from everywhere and people are remote, right? And then who are their references? Like, is it their dad? Right? Like, or whoever, it's always someone that likes you that's your reference. So it's, I think these things will continue, there'll be continued innovation in this space, right? Like, as people learn to hack things, we'll learn to double check it better, right? But I think there's just, it keeps on leaning towards like really important decisions, you do them in person still, you know what I mean? If you meet someone, check for things. And I really like the try before you buy concept on both sides. I think is awesome. And
I think that's fantastic.
It meets the moment, right? There's gig economy too right now where people have side hustles. So I think the main drawback is like a lot of companies don't allow you to work somewhere else or may have some restrictions and you might have to tell them. That becomes more complicated. So it's just figuring out what do you do in those scenarios, or is there some sort of other way to be involved and test while it's just like more of an event they go to or some sort of activity versus doing a project. So.
Well, the try before you buy concept, I mean, it's great for both sides, like you said, but it also allows leadership to test or to monitor your critical thinking, right? That our automation world doesn't allow us to do, right? Like, it's so much easier to plug in a few sentences of what you're looking for into AI and have it do the work for you. There's no real critical thinking. And, one of my things is I try not to use AI too much. I know how to use it. I know how to do a good prompt because I've been studying it. But, I like human insight. The human insight to me is something you can't get, when you plug things into AI. It's not pulling that out. So how do companies or applicants, show their critical thinking and use human insight to move, the human side forward in the hiring process and beyond?
Yeah. So I think, you have to go through the normal interview process and think about how to adapt it for all these risks. Like, there are just a lot of risks there. Like, how do you, I don't know, like I had an instance where I was working with a client, this is already like probably a year and a half ago, and called me one day in a panic saying like, oh my gosh, we think someone who joined is not who they say they are. And I was like, what? And it's like, and so apparently someone went through the whole interview process. Like, let's say I was interviewing, you were interviewing me, and then you're like, yep, okay, yeah, Susie's great, whatever. Okay, start on, September 1st. Okay, so then I start on September 1st, but someone else shows up that has dark hair and dark eyes and features, but you can't really remember what I look like because you just interviewed me like 4 weeks ago or something, right? So, and then they just start, it's the bait and switch. So, and, first time, like, I heard about this and I was like, whoa. And I was like, burn the computer. Like, maybe this is a cyber attack. Like, I have no idea what's going on here, right? And so it's like, we secured, like, cybersecurity, like, came into play, like, and we didn't think that was a risk. And then just, like, looking at the profile, like, how did this happen, right? Then it happened again. Like, I couldn't believe it. Like, another, like, not too long after, happened again. And I was like, wow. So, and it's just like, okay, we have to change our whole process of interviewing. And like, actually, in that case, it was a scaling company. I recommended getting a professional kind of search firm involved so they can flag more of the things that don't make sense in the resumes, right? Or when people are talking, they might be able to flag them better. And then also, I think there's now like an identification thing where, like, if you screen someone, to ask if you can take a picture of that person for, just for the process and then throw it away so that, when they start, it's the same person, right? And like this is where we're at, right? Like, there's a lot to consider in terms of just, and I'm not saying this is everyone. I'm just talking about some of the heightened technology around this stuff. It is fascinating, but it's also like, just, you have to be aware in the space that we're playing and, what pieces do you want to do remotely and who should be doing them? And then what do you want to do in-house, right? And when should you be in person? What are those moments that matter, that really matter about calibrating fit? And I think it still makes sense, the old adage of like, hire slow, fire fast. I still think this is true. I think it's going to become more and more true, and roles will continue to adjust in terms of like, I think branding from an HR perspective, employee branding will become bigger, more technological, you know what I mean, in terms of how all of this is done. So probably they'll split, like one person or one part of the team will be more focused on like the traction piece, and then there'll be more of a technical expertise of like exactly figuring out this piece for your org. How do you best figure that out? And just on steroids, like another example, if it's just for fun. The other day I was watching a podcast and I saw, do you know who Lattice is, or like the company Lattice?
Yeah.
So Lattice does like goal management, et cetera. And they had their head of talent talking. And one thing they're doing already with Bright HR, which is a good like AI solution, is basically connecting when they interview. So like, let's say they interview me and you interviewed me and came up with like, you know what, Susie, looks good, but here's things that are good. And here's are things that we thought we should watch out for. Okay. Or, you know, just the normal stuff you get in your interview. They match up those insights to your performance review in like the first like 3 months, like automatically, so that you can say like, oh, like, you know, did we get that right? Did we not? What should we be looking for when we're hiring? And I was like, that's smart. And that's good that it's automated because it makes it easy. Otherwise, no one's doing that. The amount of data mining traditionally that it would take to do that would not be done because there's so many other priorities. So some of this technology is just like all of the AI technology that's quality that's the outcome, right? You get to do this like next level stuff, or some of the stuff that seems simple, but it's just too much of a heavy lift is automated now.
It seems like we're kind of chasing a little bit. Like we're trying to future proof what we're doing from an HR perspective because of everything coming at us over here. So we're trying to kind of get ahead of it, but future proof and do all these other things and learn from it. What have you seen any companies kind of getting that future proofing wrong, or is there something you could share with companies that might help them get ahead of it to say, you know, it's one thing to use AI and look out for these things, but in the future, maybe you should be doing this?
I actually think of it the other way. I'm like, who are really good? Who should you follow that does a really good job and brings out stuff like the other way? I would look at Microsoft. I think Microsoft, like, they're definitely a player to watch, right? I think it's Catherine Hogan, like she's the head of HR there, and she'll post like articles about like the future of work and like, you know, how AI is automating certain jobs. And like, I think they had a whole thing about how the first step of all of this is to have like an AI assistant, that everybody at work will have an AI assistant kind of to complement your thinking, and all the way to agents and like the future where it's robots and people and AI and whatever, all that stuff, like really working concurrently. And I think we're already there in a lot of ways. And one of the first groups, if you follow like a Microsoft or just a lot of what you can read about in the space, is that it's the engineering teams, right? Like 20-30% of those teams is automated. Like code can be like this. It used to be like so hard to hire people in those areas, and they get paid top dollars, and just kind of, you know, almost overnight, right? Like as this technology really gained speed and became really strong in the coding, they're the experts on this stuff, and they can develop it quickly in their areas. Like when you think about HR, you are thinking about resource management in your organization, and how do you get to your goal, right? Using people and systems smart in an intelligent way, right? So I think that the whole idea of like understanding which areas are going to automate first too. So I think you can see that happening first, like go to the areas that are already experts and kind of like, you know, being an easy change case, and that there's a lot of success in that area, right? And then think about like all the other ones where, you know, you want to make it matter or it's harder to unwind, do little tests. You can just pilot stuff out so that, you know, I would warn people about going all in or just saying you have to be. The mistake I see a lot is like this, the FOMO, right? The fear of missing out, like where they're like, I got to get an AI. I was like, why? It's like, what are you trying to solve? Like, what are you doing? It's like, stop it. Stop. Like, we don't want to have.
It reminds me back in the day when every company would come to us and say, I need to be in social media. And my first question was always, why? And they'd look at me. I don't know. You tell me. And I'm like, you know, I can't tell you, right? Like, it's not for everybody at the time, right? Like, it's got to work for your business. It's got to work for your values, your mission, your strategy, right? Like, if it's not going to solve something that is needed either within the systems or the people in the organization or your client, why, right? Just ask the simple question, why?
And it's going to progress you. Like, definitely it's a technology we have to, like, you know, embrace. But I also think of all the other technologies you use, they're embracing them too. So like you can get ahead by like, if we're using HR as an example, like looking at the main HR systems, that they're embedding AI to predict like turnover, right? So now you don't have to do that. You don't have to look for a bolt on and, spiral out of control. They're already doing it for you. It's in their product roadmap, right? Like same thing on the finance side or all these other kind of ERPs, like really understand who the players are out there and how they're evolving too. Because that could be a shortcut for you of like really, if you think about automating end to end, like in a safe way.
It almost feels like, and I want to come back to something, which is the fear of AI taking over jobs.
Yeah.
But I want to come back to that. But it's almost like there needs to be a role in many companies that is designated to understanding and coming up with what is needed for us to be successful. How does it help us? Why do we need it? Like that person to actually become the AI expert within the organization so that HR can use it properly and understand how to, update your systems and all that. Like every single person or department, is looked at. So it almost feels like that could be a role in organizations, if it's not already, which I'm sure it could be.
For sure. I think all the big orgs have this, like their transformation offices and things like that, like in the big corporates. I think in the smaller ones, like people are, leading towards experts, right? So you might have someone externally that kind of knows these things. I think eventually you will get to a point where it's just like these innovation centers, like I think it has to be the case that you go in and it's NASCAR, what are you doing? Like, what's your product? Your product's this. Okay. You want to get set up for success? Whack, 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 like all of that stuff. And they'll just have a way that they want to consolidate all those systems. And I guess the question is like, who's going to win this race? Like there's so many players. And some like it's like .com or any of the other previous waves, like a lot of it won't survive, and some will maybe a shifting of the top position. But I think like I go back to like the Microsofts, like they're trustworthy. You know what I mean? It's going to be quality. It's going to align to your values. They're smart. They have a lot of innovation stuff like the Microsoft Reactor that you can be a part of to get educated on these topics, right? That are free. Right? Like there's a lot of free resources now. Like there's never been a better time to learn about new technology than now. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to say that anyone who listens to this, if they themselves are interested, have a 20-something that's interested, you just gave the person the perfect idea of coming up with a company that's called NASCAR that comes in and does all the bolts on and works as a freelance consultant, right? Like I can see how that itself can become a job. Right?
Oh yeah, it's an awesome job, right? And I don't even think it's that hard. It's just researching the space. Like there's a lot of tools already out there that you could build it yourself or partner with a couple key people and do it. Yeah.
Yep.
So I think it's happening in different ways. People have lots of there's so many freelancers right now that do so many different things. So like I think there's 100 flavors of this now, but like I think a consolidated quality version I haven't seen yet.
Yeah,
go for it.
Interesting. So we're gonna test that. I'm gonna keep looking for it, and when I find it, or if I find it, I'm gonna let you know.
Yeah.
But I want to come back to the idea of fear, because fear is one of the most talked about things when it comes to AI. Anyone 40 plus who knows a little bit, just enough to be fearful of AI. I constantly hear people and they tell me, I'm scared it's going to take my job. And, there are certain things that we know AI can't do. AI can't give you a really good haircut, right? So we need people. People are always going to be needed in some way, shape, or form. But what's your take on, to me, going back to that human insight, right? Like my job, anyone can write, right? Like AI writes beautiful. But AI can't sit with someone and build insight based on that conversation, right? So I hope it's not there yet. Don't tell me if it is.
Yeah.
But so, how do we stop the fear? Or is it we don't stop the fear, we have to adjust ourselves, adjust our thinking, and move in a different direction? And I don't mean a different job. I mean think differently about how we leverage it to better ourselves in our job.
Yeah.
What would be your advice on that?
I think we have to think broadly about this. Like if you look right now at the job market, like all the expert firms tell you that an average person graduating today will have about 25 jobs in their career. Okay. When
25?
So when I started working, I was celebrating Ron, who sat next to me, who'd been at 3M for like 40 years. And I loved him. You know what I mean? And like, there's so many people that were like celebrating these milestones. And a lot of I worked in like a lot of world-class organizations like GE or like Manulife. And we would have like Manulife had 25th century, quarter century club, like 25-year anniversary. And it was lovely. Like people had been there and they grew up there. Their kids know each other. Like it was just such a different era, right? And I think the era we're in now is not this era anymore, right? Like it's really hard to kind of find this cohort that they exist in pockets, right? And are celebrated. But the reality is we're in that 25 jobs in a lifetime era. So what does that mean? It means we need to just know that adaptability, ability to learn, are like your biggest assets. So like regardless if it's AI or anything else, like I think you can't hold a good person down. If you are a good player, if you can problem solving is the piece that we need to figure out how to do and use all of these different skills at its core, right? And that problem solving might look different in different organizations. So I think you can't be scared. You have to just embrace it and just say like, hey, this is where we're at. Like, I'm not going to be a loser here. Like, I'm going to, keep figuring out how to problem solve, talk to different people, go to events. Like you can get really up to speed pretty quickly by just being, with people who are, at an AI summit or, in your sector or just like where there's like innovation centers, they're always doing events. Right. And, I think that, we just have to just move forward and not be afraid of it because it is going to take jobs. But that's the same as like when we went from back before I even started working, went from paper to computers, right? Like people lost jobs. It's okay. Like there was a classic, the examples, like I remember when we were in business school about when ATMs came out, like the money dispensing that all the tellers would lose their jobs. And it was quite the opposite, right? Like they created a lot of new jobs because now people were talking about their financials with the tellers and and expanded bank services. This is the same. So like the jobs will shift to something else, like as people have needs, they'll be like focus on like ethical AI and like all of that type of thing. Or there might be more focus on the people components because, of all the stuff we've talked about earlier in the podcast. So.
Yeah. I listen a lot and that's how I get involved.
Yeah.
I'm very active in a lot of different communities and I'll pose a question and then I sit back and listen. And I think that has helped me understand how I can use AI best from other people's experiences, from, the good, the bad, the ugly to the pivot, right? Exactly what you just said. I saw something coming. I didn't like it, but I saw an opportunity somewhere else and I got myself out there. And I'm happier than I've ever been. So it's taking a look at, and like you said, it's when the things change at the bank. This happens all the time. It's cyclical, right? Yeah. Cell phones over telephones that are plugged into a wall, computers. It happens all the time. And I don't think we can get stuck by it. I think we need to look at it critically, think about how it can benefit each and every one of us, in our jobs, in our companies from a leadership perspective. And be smart about how we apply it, right? Going back to that idea.
Yeah, volunteer to be involved. Like if your organization, if you're in a company right now, be like, hey, what are we doing? What are the key projects from an AI perspective? Do you have an AI like center of expertise, right? Like get involved in that. Volunteer for the rollout, testing out tools, right? There's always opportunities, or if someone's building something, right? Like you can be involved in that. Like I know they had, for example, here in Kitchener, we have Catalyst Commons. They had a day where they actually had, I can't remember what they called it, but it was like a coding day where you could actually watch people coding in AI.
Right? Oh, that's fun.
Right? So I think that's cool. And you can kind of see, and like one, it helps all the people who are coding and building together, like to kind of see and help and talk with one another, but for others to learn, like this is what it looks like. You know what I mean? It's not some foreign entity that's so scary and like, you know what I mean? Like ultimately, like they have it there, like the technologies they're using. So.
I love the idea that as well, that people could reinvent themselves.
100%.
Right? I've been in the example of the guy that's been in a job for 20, 30 years. I mean, it doesn't exist very much, but, there are people out there that have been in a job for 10, 12 years and they're looking for a change. Well, this is your opportunity, right? Like if you are even remotely interested, but it also gives you an opportunity to say outside of AI, you know what? I think AI is going to kind of take a big piece of my job away. What do I do about that, right? What value do I bring to the job, to the organization, to keep my position? And do I want that? maybe it's time for me to explore something new and find happiness, a happy path in another direction, right? So there's a lot of opportunity out there. I think if people can get over the fear and to do that, just learn a little bit each and every day, right? Like you said, get out there, talk to people, volunteer, do whatever you can to kind of reduce the fear by learning.
Yeah, participate. And I think another fun one, just as a fun fact, I just read the other day that the fastest growing work demographic is over 80, which is like shocking and depressing. I'm like, what? You're like, that's cool.
Thank you.
It's kind of like a two-way feeling about it. You're like, that's cool, that sucks, right? But like, if people are like, kind of like, at that age, wanting to be involved, or they need to, continue from a financial perspective working, in today's economy, like whatever reason it is, they're doing it. So like there is no excuse, you know what I mean? And, whatever, like I would hire based on, like, I always say, hire a smart, happy person to learn anything. And I think that's true at any age.
I love that.
Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit about that.
Smart and happy person, for sure.
Yeah.
Like, this is someone with a good attitude that's willing to do anything. Like, that's always the person who gets it done that you want on your team, right? Mm-hmm. So I think because I grew up in like a GE environment where they hired for potential, like they put, like myself, like I went there almost out of business school and was like working in finance and audit, right? And they just gave me a chance, and they put a lot of guardrails around you. And I saw it work, and I saw so many successful people. And a lot of the people in those programs are running companies around the world right now, right? And I just think all day long, you take a smart, capable person that's like, happy and it has like a motivation to do something, they're going to do it. So I say always hire for that over anything else. You can learn anything.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Okay, last question.
Yep.
Not that we've actually tackled anything that we said we were going to talk about.
Yeah, it's like, what could be the last question?
Okay, so give me your top 3 things for people to think about, focus on, do, act when it comes to, people in the workplace, the human side of work, and AI. Okay. Any direction where you want to go.
Like the top 3 things I think you should do. I always say the first thing, and my best career advice is always to focus on your own role, right? Because if you want to be successful, you need to be successful in the role you're in right now. And you're never going to be in this place ever again. You're never going to be this age again. You're never going to be with these people again, right? And you're never going to do what you're doing right now. So whether you're extremely happy doing that or you're not as happy, just embrace the moment and just say, like, I'm taking the time to learn this. And I think that is going to get you your next job, because that experience is going to get you to the next spot. And overall, that's the best advice I have for kind of managing your career, is always to be present in your current role and work to exceed, and, do those things that I said before, like be curious, volunteer, get involved. Like, I think participating, we don't talk about participating anymore. There used to be even things you probably remember, like participation, like where's participation. And I'm like, man, we should talk more about participating and actively participating. And what does that mean? And, I think too, like, I think just try something new, based on what we're talking here, and get used to doing new things.
Yes.
And,
that's a good one for life, not just work.
I agree. And like 3 is like, I think you can learn by like doing it in a different way. Like, I will tell you, like, I see it all the time now, and you probably do too, is people who are graduating school are having such a hard time getting a job, right? So I've decided this year, I was like, I'm going to help one kid. Just like, let's just help a kid and like just get some experience and do something, right? So I'm like working with someone, Emma, at Laurier, and just, we're going to work on a study, like about like looking about Gen Z and how they get into the workplace, and like what they should be thinking about, what's going well and not going well when they're hired. And we're also going to do a case comp. So like really looking at like actually AI, like how do you, what are some innovative ideas they have around, making that process better, or like what is the best way to kind of get like the right candidate through the process, given all of the technology that exists today. But then, it's cool. I'm learning a lot from her, and then, we'll work together, and I get to kind of help her go through this process, right? So I think it's something we can all do, instead of just talking about all these other things. Like, take an action, whatever you want to do, like you can move the dial a bit on any topic, on, whether you want to get involved in the community or in technology, etc. You have to go do something. Like, just start today. I'm all about action. I'll always respect anyone who takes action.
That's a great closing message. Thank you. And we do want to circle back at one point with you and Emma at one point, once you guys have done your research and your paper, talk about what you guys have learned.
100%.
So Thank you, Susy. I really appreciate you joining me today in the conversation. I've learned a ton. Some I'm a little bit frightened about, not going to lie. But most of it's been very, very inspiring. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
That's my pleasure. Nice to spend time with you. Thanks for the opportunity, Erin.
Thank you.